welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence, and this week we have a guest co-host. Say hi to everybody, Mark.
Hi, my name is Mark Florence. I'm Kelly's husband and a huge horror fan.
Yeah, right. Mark, tell us what the first horror movie that you saw was when you were a kid.
I believe it was Halloween 2, and I remember the guy getting drowned in that really hot tub. That was my favorite.
Okay. Oh, I know what you're talking about, in like the hospital.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, that's cool. And I know that you had some sort of horror story from a movie. Something about faces?
Faces of Death. We used to always see those in the video store, and my mom would rent them for us. And they were inappropriate for children.
Was it super scary or what?
Yeah, it showed different ways people died and showed graphic pictures and videos and stuff like that.
That is terrifying. Well, this week we're talking about Friday the 13th Part 2. And it's funny because I've liked horror movies and watched them a lot. And Mark watches with me sometimes, but he's not always, into it. But all of a sudden, he gets this Friday the 13th video game, and all of a sudden he wants to start watching all these Friday the 13th movies. So, since Meg and I talked about Part 1, Mark and I are going to talk about Part 2 today and then Part 3 another day. Mark, why do you love this game so much?
The game really feels like the movies, and it really scares you. It gets your heart going. It gets adrenaline going. And I heard that the game looks exactly like the movie, which is accurate because they designed all the maps that you play in the game off of each movie, like Crystal Lake, Packanack, Higgins Haven, and Pinehurst.
So he's becoming quite the aficionado. We're going to talk about, like I said, Friday the 13th Part 2. A little background on this movie. It came out in 1981. It was directed by Stephen Miner. It had a budget of $1.25 million, and it took a box office of $21.7 million. It was originally supposed to be part of an anthology movie series based on the Friday the 13th superstition, so all of these bad things would happen on Friday the 13th or people born on Friday the 13th. But the popularity of the first film ended up that they resurrected Jason or had that, the dream sequence in the end, which shouldn't have mattered, all of a sudden be like, oh, but maybe Jason is alive and he's the killer now. Adrienne King, who played Alice in the first movie, she was actually stalked after that movie, and she didn't want a large part in this movie. And so that's why she only ended up with that small role. But she didn't even know the small role that she would have, which is just basically the cameo in the beginning. And when she showed up to set, there wasn't even a script, and so she just showed up and had to ad-lib the phone call. And then she was murdered on screen by Jason, who, murdered her in revenge for having decapitated her mother. But it's just kind of interesting. Also, did you notice when she's killed in the beginning, Mark, that she got an ice pick to the head? Well, apparently the ice pick, the first time or the time that we see in the movie, it didn't retract, so she was really screaming in pain.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
So what do you want to talk about for this movie? Well, the old man from the beginning, he's from the first movie, and he's trying to warn this new group of kids not to go out there to, what does he call it, Mark?
Camp Blood, yeah. Camp Blood was the original name of Friday the 13th, and they later changed it to Friday the 13th, but there are Camp Blood references throughout the first and second movie.
Interesting. So this is a funny thing that I notice that I always do in movies, and Mark gives me a hard time about it. I care more about the animals or the pets in movies than I do about the people, because when we think that Muffin, the dog, has been murdered, they do that cut from the dog to the hot dogs grilling. I'm like, oh no, Jason, why do you have to kill the dog? But there's like people dying. I'm the horrible person.
Yeah, you always side with the animals. Somebody's head could get chopped off and all their limbs cut off, but if Jason just grabs a dog and they don't show it happen, you lose your mind. The unibrow counselor named Scott is extremely creepy and weird, and
is he the one who like hits that girl in the Mickey Mouse cutoff?
they introduce him by him shooting slingshotting a rock at a girl's butt, and that's the least creepy thing he does in the whole thing.
Yeah, he is kind of a stalker. He's kind of creepy. Speaking of that girl, she goes skinny dipping by herself at night when her dog is missing. That's something I would not do.
Yeah, correct. And Scott proceeds. They make you think it's Jason, but Scott ends up taking her clothes, so she has to chase him naked. So
He's just a
Scott's
jerk.
a creeper.
I don't like that. Oh, earlier in this, when the dog goes missing, well, I guess the dog is already missing, but that couple they want to sneak over to Camp Crystal Lake to see, what everything's about because they're forbid from going over there. When I went to camp when I was younger, there was a camp next door to Salolumpy. That's the Finnish camp I attended, and it was called Morning Star, and kids always wanted to sneak over there. And I don't even know what they did because I never did that because I was a good kid. But there were like kids sneaking over to Morningstar and like making out. That was like the biggest story of my camp experience. It was like hearing that somebody went to Morningstar and made out.
Well, I got a question. Were these movies out when you went to camp, and did anybody fear the same things would happen there or anything like that?
They definitely were out when I was going to camp, but for some reason that it never came up. Like we were never like, oh, maybe Jason's in the lake.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm glad you didn't have to worry about that.
Oh, you know what? Speaking of this, you have a story about Boy Scout camp and what your parents did. What were they, the leaders or chaperones, or what happened?
Yeah, my parents were Cub Scout leaders for my brother's Cub Scout troop. So I'm guessing they were in like first, second grade or something like that. And one of the first meetings, they had a bonfire in the woods by our house. And they told a story about how this guy used to live there, but the county kicked him off the land, and he was really upset about it. And he vowed to come back one day. And at that point, everything got quiet, and they had my neighbor hiding in the woods. And he came out, and he's like, yeah, get out of here, kids. And all the kids were scared, and they ran, and one kid peed his pants, so...
I feel like if that happened nowadays with social media and everything, your parents would be sued.
But that is the exact scene from this movie where he's telling the story of Jason, and then he has the skinny nerdy counselor guy, I don't know his name, come out with the Indian mask on. So very similar situation. Yikes.
That's funny. Oh, a little factoid here. Jason was played by a woman in one of the scenes when in the very beginning of this movie when they showed Jason walking towards Alice's house. I guess it was a woman who stood in for Jason at that point.
Yeah, I didn't catch that scene, but I did notice they only show you Jason's point of view. They never really show Jason until pretty much halfway through the movie, so that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I like that killer cam point of view shot. I think it's really effective. The victim cam can be good too. Do you know what I mean? Like when they show, it's like a camera's on the person running and you see them running. What was that show on MTV? It's not Fear Factor, but there was something like where they would have to go and try to spend the night in an asylum or something.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about, but I forgot the name. Yeah, where they had walkie-talkies and ghost hunting equipment, but and night vision cameras. That was an interesting show.
Yeah, and how they attach the cameras to them always made it look really scary when they were running away. Did you notice when they're drinking at the bar, the Heineken bottles look exactly the same as they do now?
Yes, don't change something that works. That's what I always say. I have another thing to say about the bar. I believe her name is Ginny. They're talking in the bar, drinking, and she describes the situation surrounding Jason perfectly, that he came back, he doesn't like counselors. Everything she says is spot on, but then they just tell her, you're drunk, and then no one listens to her.
It's a recurring theme where they don't listen to the woman. Maybe
Yeah.
they're going to mansplain it or dismiss what she says. But yeah, she's basically revealing the entire plot.
Yeah, that's correct. And I mean, I don't know if they did that on purpose just to try to explain the movie to somebody or what. But yeah, I thought that was interesting.
It's true because they obviously the first movie, Jason's mother is the killer, and so now if we take that last scene in part one didn't actually happen, that it was Alice's dream. Jason really did age and had to be raised by himself in the woods, and he saw his mother get decapitated, and so he takes out his revenge on Alice. I kind of feel sorry for him.
Yeah, I mean, you could make the argument that he's actually the victim in this movie until he starts killing everybody.
You know what would be cool? I think we need a prequel. I think we need a Jason prequel where we either see him growing up and sort of like the life that he led with his mother and maybe even, up to his drowning, or started at his drowning and let's see those alone years and him living off the land and maybe he meets people along the way and what happens.
Yeah, no, that would be very interesting, and that you should probably pitch that to some studio execs.
I'll get right on that. The next thing I have written is towards the end. So tell me what you have, what you want to talk about that happens earlier in the movie.
I don't know her name, but she has a crush on the guy in the wheelchair, and
yeah.
she is not hiding her intentions with that guy, although he doesn't seem to be seeing what she's getting at. But then they finally do have a connection, so to speak, and she's going to get ready, and that's when, unfortunately, he's out on the porch, and Jason just comes out of nowhere and has no empathy for the guy in the wheelchair. Just immediately, can't remember what, hits him right in the head with like a machete or something. Then his wheelchair goes down the stairs. So.
Oh, that's so sad. Yeah, like this girl was thirsty. Like she was not hiding it. She was using all these innuendos, and she was being pretty blatant. And he's just like, "What?"
Yeah, they're playing some video hockey game, and he says, "What are we playing for?" And she says, "Position."
Boy. So that was that was a sad death. The dog ends up being alive, by the way. That got skipped all the way to the end. So the dog wasn't even killed. So I was mad about that for nothing, or sad about it. What is the lead girl's name? Ginny? Did you say, or Jenny?
I believe her name's Ginny.
She is a lot braver than I would be by putting on Pamela's sweater there at the end and pretending to be talk as Jason's mother in order to, trick him into not killing her. That was... would you have put on a dead person's sweater?
Well, earlier, his name's Paul. He's like the main head counselor guy there. He's getting attacked in the Packanack Lodge by Jason, and she's just standing there doing nothing. So it's quite a turn of events that she ends up being the hero and being so brave at the end.
Yeah, she didn't do anything that first time, and we never really know what happens, how we got away from Jason. And then at the end, when she's getting brought into the ambulance, she's like, "Where's Paul?" And it's never explained. I guess it was meant to be left ambiguous. But how about this? In that prequel that I'm going to write, how about Paul is in on it?
Yeah, that's maybe they're brothers. They don't really touch on Paul's backstory too much in the movie, so it's very possible.
Spoiler alert!
It actually isn't, because in the first one, Jason's mom says that's her only son. So, and where's Jason's dad, by the way?
Oh, but it could be a stepbrother. It's a different father.
That's very possible. Yes, I agree.
I think we're onto something here. Oh, the way that this movie was supposed to end was they end with the shot on the mother's severed head. That movie was supposed to end with the eyes opening and the head turning a bit. So it's like more of a supernatural kind of thing, but they decided to cut that. What do you think?
I mean, I would kind of like that too, although it really wouldn't have anything to do with anything that happened in the movie and anything that's going to happen in the next movies. So I guess that is probably for the best that they took that out. I kind of liked how they used that little creek that the people keep running through when they're going to Jason's shack as just like a point of reference or like a point of crossing over? Like, I don't know. I mean, it's just
Territory.
yeah. I mean, yeah. Once you go over that creek, you're in Jason's territory. Once you go back over the creek, you're back on the good side. But I just thought it was a nice little thing that they did to kind of let you know where they were. And
Oh, that speaking of that last scene when they cross the creek and they're in Jason's shack, the actress hit the actor playing Jason with a machete, and it must have been real or sharp enough that he actually ended up having to go to the emergency room and wear a fake finger for the rest of the shoot. So, hey, it's real. It could happen.
yeah, I mean, being in these movies is pretty dangerous, and especially with untrained actors with sharp weapons.
We have had a fight choreographer staying with us for the past couple weeks for a play that I've been stage managing, and he's got some stories. But be safe is the bottom line, the moral of the story. Be safe and know what's sharp and where your weapons are.
Just another quick point. Jason's shack is really in need of some renovations. It's I don't know. There's holes in the wall. It's just a bunch of random pieces of wood. It looks like a fort I would build when I was a kid. So I don't think he went to any vocational or like carpentry schools or anything, because it's the quality of craftsmanship. It just isn't there for me.
You're being mean to this poor child who had to raise himself. Maybe Paul helped him build it though. I don't know. I'm on this Paul kick of him being a brother. Yeah, I mean, poor Jason. Did he, that's what I want to know. Like, did he ever meet anybody out there, and was there some vagrant that helped him?
I guess, why wouldn't Jason be staying in like a cabin at Crystal Lake or something? Why is he living in this shack? Is it to avoid detection or getting in touch with the outside world?
I don't know. I mean, we could have a discussion just on getting into Jason's psyche and what happened to him and everything that he went through. Part of the thing with Jason, another reason why I would love a prequel, is we don't really know what level of intelligence or education he has. So, I mean, what is he capable of, and how long was he underwater, and did he get some brain damage from that?
Well, there's a scene that shows a little bit of humanity, if you will, to Jason when she's fighting him with a chainsaw. He seems like he's kind of scared and he's kind of backing off a little bit. So I thought that was interesting that he wasn't just in attack mode the whole time. He was kind of falling back, and he kind of had a confused look on his face, even though you could only see one of his eyes through the thing. You could from his one eye you could tell he was scared and confused, and his body language too.
Good reference, and a nice acting on that actor's part. Also, he's not immortal by this point in the series. I mean, I think he becomes immortal eventually. We're going to talk through these movies as we watch, but he's still able to be injured.
Yeah, he was injured a few times in this movie, and he can be tricked somewhat easily. She was just hiding behind the car, I think, and he didn't see her. But somehow, if he runs one way and you run the other way, he's always jumping out of the bushes in front of you. So that's actually part of the game where you can just morph around the map to any spot. So if you see, the game is basically one person plays Jason, and then there's 8 counselors. And it's an online game, and you're randomly selected to play Jason every now and again. But Jason's job is to get rid of all the counselors, and the counselors are trying to escape via a car, a boat, or by calling the police and having them show up. But yeah, in the game you can morph around the map, and you can also shift where you're like going really fast through the woods and stuff, and you can still see what's going on around you. So I'm assuming he was shifting and morphing during those times.
And I guess you could argue that it's his woods. He's grown up there, so he knows it the best, and that's maybe why he can get around so quickly. Oh, there's this one scene, and I was reading about it, where the rat comes when near her when she's hiding under the bed. And Mark, that's like your worst fear because you hate rodents. But then someone on some message board was like, "Is she peeing because she's so scared of the rat, or is the rat peeing?" And I guess it's the rat.
Yeah, I also thought that she was peeing because she was so scared, because the amount of pee or urine seemed excessive for a rat. It was very excessive, and Jason didn't play that very well in that situation. He, instead of just knowing she was under the bed and getting rid of her, he, for whatever reason, got up on a chair and made her think she was gone. And then when she started getting out from under the bed, his chair kind of broke while he was about to hit her, and then he fell, and then she was able to get away.
You know, part of the fun thing watching movies with Mark is, or with, a lot of people, is that you like logic things out and you're like, why did he do that? That was really dumb because he could have just killed her, but then it wouldn't be much of a movie, or there wouldn't be much plot, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I like to look at these things for, some kind of realism and some kind of, fantasy portion to them, but he really thought out that kill and like how he got up on the chair and stuff. So I kind of feel like that is kind of out of character for him.
Because we know Jason so well and his character choices. Anything else you want to say about Friday the 13th Part 2? Did you see this movie when you were a kid? Do you remember?
I must have seen it at some point, but sometimes if you see a movie like 20 years ago and then you see it again, you don't think you've ever seen it, but then all of a sudden little things start coming to you and seeming familiar. So I probably saw it, but I can't remember.
Yeah, the same with me. When we rewatched the first Friday the 13th this past summer, then I started rewatching all of these movies from the beginning, and I too didn't remember specifics about the movie, but I had seen it at some point.
Yeah, it used to be whenever I was sick home from school, I'd have my mom rent various horror movies, so oftentimes it was Friday the 13th, so that's probably when I saw it.
Very cool. What else do you want to say?
Just like in the first movie where they never show the killers, who the killer is, they show that their point of view. They do that a lot. In this one, they do that pretty much the first half of the movie. So it makes the audience wonder if it's Jason, if it's his mom, if it's somebody else. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and something I didn't think about, but now that you said that, we see the last part of the first movie through Alice's perspective, and it's her story that she's telling because she's the only one who survived. And so we don't even really know if Mrs. Voorhees was decapitated. Like, maybe she's still out there killing people. I don't know if they played with that at all, but I just thought, maybe they were just like, oh, Alice is crazy, and she didn't really kill this woman.
Yeah, I mean, just having that little sense of doubt, makes the audience wonder, so that keeps them on the edge of their seat.
This movie got a 34% on Rotten Tomatoes, and as we've talked about week after week, I don't always trust Rotten Tomatoes for actually telling how good a horror movie is, because critics are usually rough on them. But I think I enjoyed it. I think it's got a similar formula to the first movie, except of course the killer is different. But I enjoyed it. How about you?
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed this movie, especially after playing the game and seeing how similar the Packanack Lodge was to the lodge in the game, and how the little cabin up on the hill. And this movie jump scared me a few times. One of the really good jump scare scenes is she's hiding in the bathroom, kind of pulling on the door, waiting for him to try to open the door, and he's not coming, and she's trying to gather up the courage to go to the window to escape. So she finally gets the courage to do it, and right when she gets to the window, he crashes through the window and tries to grab her. So I thought that was a pretty cool scene.
Yeah, that was good.
Another being me and being logical and stuff, I noticed some continuity issues with the time of year. For most of the movie, it was really green. You know, you could probably tell June time frame, but some of the scenes, you could definitely see a lot of fall colors. So, you know, it's hard to make a movie and be perfect with those types of things, but I always tend to notice them. So.
Wouldn't he be fun to watch a movie with, folks? No, it's not really that bad. Most of the time, I'm just like, just let me enjoy this, please.
Yeah, I mean, I just noticed that, you know, I just tend to notice those things, and it doesn't take away from my enjoyment of the movie, but
it takes away from mine.
Yeah, but I like to, you know, just point little things like that out. Another thing on those same lines is that oftentimes it'll be broad daylight when those two people are trying to get over to Camp Crystal Lake. They walk by this tree, and 1 second later, Jason walks out from behind the tree on the same side where they could have very easily seen him. So, and that could be along the lines of the more for the shifting again in his woods, but it just seems like he's just walking around in plain sight and nobody can see him.
This is something we will need explained in the prequel. Okay, what we do every week on Horror Rewind, if you've listened to any episodes, Mark, is we rank the movies on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being you hated it, 10 being it's a perfect movie. First of all, we need our scale of rank. So what should we pick from the movie to rank?
What do you mean you rank them out 1 out of 10 somethings?
Yeah.
Pickaxes?
Is a pickaxe used in this one?
Or we could use
Pamela Voorhees sweaters?
or a potato sack, because that's what his mask is made out of.
Okay, we'll use the potato sack. So out of 0 to 10 potato sacks, how many do you give Friday the 13th Part 2?
I would give it 7 potato sacks. It was a solid movie. I feel like the first one was better, maybe because it was new. But yeah, I mean, I'm a little biased too because of playing the game, and felt kind of nostalgic to see it in the movie and, you know, compared to the game. And also about the game, a lot of the counselors you play are characters from this movie, so that was pretty cool too.
I would also give this movie a 7 potato sacks. I think it's still pretty solid. I think I preferred the first movie because Pamela Voorhees is the killer and it's so unexpected. I mean, it's all a spoiler now, but you know, think about that twist. It's a pretty cool twist. So, anything else you want to say about Friday the 13th?
Yeah, also the ending is very similar where, you know, there's all this stuff going on, and then you finally think you have him. And then there's a real tense moment. In this one, they hear something at the door. Paul goes over to the door, and they're all ready to attack Jason, and it's the dog that we thought had been killed by Jason. So then, you know, the music goes down, nice, soft, pleasant music starts, and everyone feels safe. And then they do the huge jump scare where she's sitting on a bed or something, and then there's a window behind her, and he just jumps through the window. And that's the first time you see his face, and his face is all disfigured, and his eyes are all uneven.
Yeah, he has that condition where his skull. We talked about it in our first episode of the Friday the 13th, where he is disfigured. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and you know, both of those scenes are like slow motion, like where the kid jumps out of the water and grabs her, and this one it's through the window, but it's and they did a good job with the makeup on his face because it's pretty scary and revolting to look at him.
Oh, poor Jason. Well, thanks for joining us, Mark. I look forward to talking to you about Friday the 13th Part 3 next time.
Yes, definitely.
It's time for our Fast Forward segment. And this week, I wanted to talk to you about a movie that came out a few weeks ago now called The Ritual. Have you watched it yet? It's available on Netflix, and it came out in 2017. It's a British horror movie directed by David Bruckner and written by Joe Barton. This is actually based on a novel. I'm curious if any of you have read the novel. It's about this group of friends that go hiking in a national park in Sweden, and they take a shortcut through the forest, and things don't go as planned. There's a lot more to the plot than that. I'm not going to give anything away because I don't want to give any spoilers, but it is absolutely worth a watch. I was looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score for this movie, and it's only listed at a 69% on Rotten Tomatoes. But as I've mentioned before, I don't always agree with critics, especially when it comes to horror movies. I think this ranks way up there with one of the best horror movies I've seen recently. It's got a good, complicated plot, some interesting characters. It's got some really creepy moments, and the monster, I don't think I'm giving anything away by saying there's a monster in this movie. It's really well done. So it's worth a look. It's, like I said, it's a British movie, but it takes place in Sweden for part of it. It's not subtitled or anything, but I think you'll enjoy it. So I would definitely check it out if you have Netflix. There's a lot of people have been saying this movie has one of the coolest movie monsters in years. There's a bloody, disgusting article that just came out a couple weeks ago talking about how much they liked it, and there a lot of people are really getting on board with this movie. So again, it's called The Ritual, and I highly recommend it. If you have any horror movies, new or old, that you would like to recommend for us to watch or check out and maybe even talk about on the podcast, let us know. You can email us at horrorrewindpodcast@gmail.com. You can leave us a message on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And you can also go to our website, horrorrewind.com. I hope you're having a great week, and until next time, we'll see you in the horror section.